I'm Shane Morris with the Colson Center for Christian Worldview. What would you say if someone asked you to explain gender identity, or when life begins, or why a family with a mom and a dad is better than two moms or two dads? These are tough questions, and they're questions we hear every day from our family, our friends, the media, and sometimes even in our churches. And even if you know where you stand, could you explain the biblical positions on these and other tough questions in a civil and concise way? The Colson Center has launched a new project to help Christians with short, sharp, and biblical answers to questions we hear every day. We call this project, What Would You Say? It's a collection of videos you can watch and share that'll help you answer some of life's toughest questions. The Colson Center's Joseph Backholm leads this project, and he's our guest on today's podcast. Joseph Backholm is legal counsel and director of What Would You Say? He joined the Colson Center after a decade as the president and general counsel of the Family Policy Institute of Washington in Washington State, where he managed educational, legislative, and electoral operations on behalf of life, marriage, religious freedom, and parental rights. Joseph received his bachelor's degree from the University of Washington and his law degree from Seattle University. He and his wife, Brooke, live with their 4 children near Dallas, Texas. He's interviewed by our colleague here at the Colson Center, Warren Cole-Smith.
Joseph, welcome to the podcast. You know, I'm really excited to have you on because, of course, we've been working together here at the Colson Center for a while. And, of course, I've known you for many years. But I'm especially excited because of this project that you've been working on. What would you say? Tell me about that project.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. It's good to be with you on this format. What would you say? It is. Yep. It's exciting for me, and it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. And really, the name kind of suggests what I think we're trying to accomplish with this, which is a lot of people have questions about what's going on in the culture, and they're looking for somebody to ask the question. You know, they have an opinion, they have a yes or no answer sometimes, but they don't know more than that. They don't feel prepared to talk to their kids or their coworkers or the people in their family about what's going on in the culture, but they want to. They want to feel more equipped than they feel right now. And so we think this is a tool that people can use to go to when these questions get asked of them, and they can get really quick, concise answers that not only satisfy their own curiosity, but give them the tools they need to talk to other people as well.
Well, Joseph, you released 3 videos last week, and they are in the form of a question, as you said. The first video, and we're going to listen to this one in just a minute, is Doesn't Love Make a Family? The second video that you released is What is Gender Fluidity? And the third video is Does Life Begin at Conception? All 3 of them are questions. Why did you pick these 3? What was special about these 3, and what was the process you went through to determine what questions you were going to ask?
Well, these 3, and like all the others that are going to be coming, these are just some of the most common questions that people have asked. And this is a range of different issues. We have one on family structure, one in kind of the gender identity, gender expression conversation, and the other in the life conversation. And so we're really trying to touch different subject matters and get the most common questions that people ask. And for those of us who have been in this space for a while, you run into the same questions over and over and over and over again. And soon you realize there really is a pattern here. People are wondering the same thing. So if we create a tool that anticipates that question and provides an answer and then puts it in a place where people are used to going to get answers to their questions, we think we can serve a lot of people with that.
Well, Joseph, why don't we go ahead and listen to Doesn't Love Make a Family? And before we do listen to it, though, I just want to observe that there's a lot of great graphics there. You have a great spokesperson for all of the videos. In fact, you're the spokesperson for some of the videos. But I think that they sort of stand alone. Without the video, I think our listeners are going to be able to catch the drift of it very well. But before we listen, anything you want to say about it?
Well, this one in particular, I think this question, doesn't love make a family? And set it up in the video, we'll do the audio in this case, we'll do a little bit of that. But this is the idea that moms and dads may not be specifically necessary. And we're told in this sexual revolution that the only thing that really is important to a family is loving each other. And of course, nobody is opposed to love, and we want love in families and other places. But is that really all that matters when it comes to what's best for kids? And that's the sentiment that we anticipated and tried to provide an answer to in this video.
Well, let's give it a listen right now.
Doesn't love make a family? If you're in a conversation about families and marriage and someone says, it doesn't matter what a family looks like. After all, love makes a family. What would you say? When someone says love makes a family, what they typically mean is that when it comes to marriage or parenting, things like gender, marital status, and biological connections are less important than simply being loved. It's a nice sentiment. After all, many of our closest and most important relationships are with people we aren't related to. But is it true about families? Sociologists have been studying family structure for decades. They overwhelmingly agree that by far, the best situation for children is being raised in the home of their married mother and father. That means three things: gender matters, biology matters, and marriage matters. First, gender matters. So different are the ways that men and women interact with children that many sociologists say that there's no such thing as parenting. There's only mothering and fathering. From the way they communicate, to the way that they play, to how they discipline, men and women offer distinct and complementary benefits to children. There are heroic single parents out there, but they face major challenges because the other parent is gone. When one parent is missing, the father, for example, children fall into almost predictable negative patterns. Fathering encourages independence. Mothering encourages emotional security. Men don't mother. Women don't father. Kids need both. Second, biology matters. Kids don't just need any adults, they need their parents. The reason screening for adoption is so rigorous is because social workers understand that placing a child with a biological stranger is risky. There are heroic step-parents out there, but they, like single parents, must overcome significant challenges. In fact, on average, kids in blended families fare about as well as kids who grow up with a single mom. Beyond concerns about safety, kids crave something that only their biological parents can give them: their biological identity. This is evident by the waves of adoptees and donor-conceived children who are increasingly turning to ancestry websites and social media to find their missing parents. Third, marriage matters. Marriage is more than just a piece of paper. It's the single most important dividing line between kids who thrive and kids who do not. A federal study of child abuse found that children living with their cohabiting parents are more than 4 times more likely to be abused than their peers living with married parents. Kids living with mom and her cohabiting boyfriend, 11 times more likely to be abused. In addition, children living with their unmarried parents are twice as likely to see their parents break up. The evidence is clear. Stability matters for kids, and marriage seems to bring it to the lives of children in a way that nothing else can. But there's more. Children with unmarried parents are 6 times more likely to demonstrate behavioral issues, 122% more likely to be expelled from school, and 90% more likely to have a lower GPA. Children with unmarried parents are also twice as likely to live in poverty. Our lived experience likely tells the same story. We either greatly benefited from the love of our mother and father, or we suffered because we missed out on one or both. Of course, the ideal is not always possible. In those cases, grandparents, adoptive parents, and single parents do the very best they can to give children what they need in the absence of mom or dad. So let's not let a slogan get in the way of what's really best for kids. When it comes to family, love matters. But when it comes to what's best for children, that's not all that matters. Let's review. Next time someone tells you that family structure doesn't really matter and love is what makes a family, remember these 3 things. Gender matters. Kids don't need parents, they need a mother and father. Biology matters. Kids do best when connected to their biological mother and father. Marriage matters. It's not just a piece of paper. It represents security and stability for kids. For What Would You Say? I'm Katie Faust.
Well, Joseph, that was just a remarkable and very short lesson. I mean, it's about 4 minutes long. Are all of the videos about 4 minutes?
Yeah, we have videos as they be released somewhere between 2 and 5 minutes are everything that we've created so far. And I can't promise that there won't be something outside of that range, but so far everything that we have that will be released is right in 2 to 5 minutes because we want it to be accessible and quick, but also really helpful.
Well, one of the other things I noticed about that video, Joseph, and it's certainly true of the other 2 videos that you've released in this initial rollout, is that they ask the question and then you answer the question really succinctly with usually 3 talking points, 1, 2, and 3. And then you go through those talking points and then you summarize it at the end. I mean, for somebody like me who may not be an expert in these issues, boy, that was really helpful. I don't have to remember 10 things, but maybe one thing doesn't tell the whole story or make the entire case, but I can remember 3 talking points. Is that what you were aiming for with that process?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the format, as you just heard, and what people will see as they go watch them, is there really is kind of a recipe. We ask the question, and then we provide 3 responses, and then there is a review section. Because the goal of this is not just to convince you that we're right, or that you're right, whatever your assumptions may be, but to give you the tools to be able to talk about it with other people. Because we know that within the church, as we're navigating the culture that is changing so rapidly, there's a lot of kind of emotive and even intellectual answers. I think that's not right, but I don't know why, and I can't really explain it to anybody. I wish I could. And that's the sentiment that we're trying to provide a response to is, I know that's not right, and now I can explain it to you in a kind, gracious, yet really intelligent way.
Well, Joseph, one of the other things that I thought was really cool about these videos is that, sometimes you have you as the spokesperson or as sort of the narrator of the videos, but sometimes you'll have an expert like Stephanie Gray on when does life begin at conception. And, that sort of not that you're not credible, Joseph. Let's just
I get it. I get it. There's much better.
You are very credible.
Yes.
But you've got these experts that have come in. How do you work with them? How do you, of course, someone like Stephanie is an expert already in the pro-life movement, but getting her message down to 4 minutes, that must be quite a process.
It is a bit of a process. And as we built this up, the script writing that goes into this, it wasn't a small task of taking a tremendously large amount of information that you could deliver appropriately in response to these questions. And how do you condense it down into something that is really succinct, but also satisfying? So you're actually providing a substantive answer to the question. And it was not a simple process. And certainly Stephanie and Katie, who was on the video that everyone just listened to, they were very much a part of the script writing process and lent their expertise to the information itself. And we hope to continue to do that as we create these, is bring people who have expertise that we don't necessarily have and have an understanding of an issue that we couldn't bring to it, that will help inform people and make these a really good product for folks.
Well, Joseph, with that, and since we've just talked about Stephanie, let's hear Stephanie Gray on the video Life Begins at Conception.
You're in a conversation about abortion, and someone says, human life doesn't begin at conception. It's just a clump of cells. What would you say? It's easy to say life doesn't begin at conception because an embryo doesn't look like what we think people should look like. But we know human life begins at some point. Here are a few things to remember while you think about when that is. First, life doesn't begin at birth. It isn't logical to say life begins at birth because that would suggest that the baby inside the womb one day prior to birth wasn't alive. It's not reasonable to say an individual who is alive at birth is not alive one day prior to birth. The only difference is where they are. So we know life does not begin at birth. Second, life doesn't begin at viability. Many argue that human life begins once a baby can survive on her own outside the womb. But there are problems with this argument too. After all, viability changes based on technology. Today, babies can be born at 24 weeks and survive. But 200 years ago, that wasn't possible. Viability is also determined based on where you are born. Wealthy nations make things possible for babies that wouldn't be possible in a poorer country. Does that mean a 24-week baby in the United States is more alive than a 24-week baby in the jungles of the Congo? Of course not. So life must be determined by something other than viability. Third, life does not begin with the heartbeat. We know that living things only come from other living things. It wouldn't be possible then for the embryo to be non-living for the first few weeks and suddenly spring into life. So the embryo has to be alive prior to the heartbeat. Does this mean that we can be alive without a heartbeat? Yes. That's actually what makes the newly conceived embryo more functionally impressive than a born person. The embryo has an ability to live, grow, and move through the stages of human development without the feature you and I need to continue our growth and development. If life doesn't begin at birth, viability, or heartbeat, when does it begin? Life begins at conception, fertilization. At fertilization, a living mother and father give life to a whole living organism, genetically distinct from his or her mother and father. No, the embryo doesn't look like everyone else, but aren't we past the idea that someone has to look a certain way before they are considered human? Think of it like a Polaroid picture. Initially, all you will see are black smudge marks. The moment the photo is taken, however, the image is captured. It just needs time to develop. The same is true for you and me. The moment of sperm-egg fusion, we, in our uniqueness from our parents, began to exist. We just needed time to develop. Let's review. Life doesn't begin at birth, because that suggests you aren't alive the day before birth. Life doesn't begin at viability, because viability depends on where you were born and when. Life doesn't begin at the heartbeat either, because that requires you to believe the heartbeat emerged from someone that isn't alive. So we're left with one option. Life begins at conception, at fertilization. It's what science tells us and logic requires us to acknowledge. For What Would You Say? I'm Stephanie Gray.
That was Stephanie Gray, and does life begin at conception, which is the question that she asked and answered in that short video.
Yeah, and Stephanie, for those who don't know her and maybe just being introduced to her, she is, in my opinion, one of the best pro-life apologists on the planet. And she is not only really smart, but she is a super gracious, compassionate, articulate spokesperson for the pro-life cause. And we're very fortunate to have her. And I think that video just does a great job of answering one of the most specific and most common questions. When does life begin? And there's other videos that are going to come that there are follow-up questions to this, because that doesn't certainly end the conversation about the life issue, but it certainly starts it. And if you don't have a good answer to that question as a pro-life advocate, it's really hard to go the next step as well and defend and respond to the other questions that are also fairly predictable in this. So she did a really good job, I think, and we're fortunate to have her. And stay tuned, because she's in a couple more as well.
Well, you know, Joseph, producing videos is one thing, and I know that had to have been a huge task to get them done and to get the animation done and the graphics and all of that sort of thing. But now that you've got them produced, or at least the first round of videos produced, you got to get them out. And talk to me a little bit about that process. How are you distributing these videos? How can our listeners see them?
Yeah, you know, you're right. This is a big part of the job, because even if we have the best content in the world, if nobody sees it, it doesn't do us or anybody else any good. And right now, there's two places that you can see this. It's online at our website. The platform lives at whatwouldyousay.org. We also have a YouTube channel at youtube.com/whatwouldyousay. And that's where those videos live. Every video that is released every Wednesday, we'll be releasing a new video. And that's where you'll be able to find that. And soon, other social media platforms will begin to pop up as well as we expand our reach. And you can expect it on Facebook and Twitter and other places in the coming weeks and months. But right now, the website at whatwouldyousay.org and YouTube at youtube.com/whatwouldyousay.
Well, Joseph, we've already mentioned the videos that are out. Doesn't Love Make a Family? What is gender fluidity? And does life begin at conception? And you also kind of gave us a teaser that Stephanie Gray would be appearing in some of the other future videos on the life issue. Can you tease us a little bit more? What are some of the videos that you have planned in the weeks and months ahead? And who are some of the partners that you've brought into this process to help you put these videos together?
Well, I can talk about some of the topics right now. And others, things like LGBT theology. There's this whole conversation happening within the church about whether the Bible actually says what it appears to have said. And there's some more progressive Christians who are making the argument very sincerely and passionately that all of the passages of Scripture that appear to condemn same-sex relationships and same-sex sexual activity don't actually mean that. And that the Sodom and Gomorrah wasn't actually about homosexuality, and that Jesus never condemned homosexuality. And we have a series specifically addressing those issues. And those are much more theological, because those are theological arguments being made about what Scripture says. So there's a theological response given to those. We have a section on cultural engagement that will deal with whether it's wrong to legislate morality, whether churches should stay out of political issues. We will also have a series on religious liberty, and we'll talk about whether it's wrong, whether the Christian baker should be compelled to bake the cake, or whether the Christian baker should bake the cake. And is discrimination always a bad thing? And some of these conversations that are coming up over and over and over again that express sentiments that we as Christians really sympathize with, but helping us think more deeply than just what the emotion is behind the question and the issue, to make sure that our position is one that's really consistent with Scripture and also consistent with ordered liberty that we all benefit from.
Well, Joseph, listen, I just want to say thank you so much for all the work that you've put into these videos. I know we've got 3 out. You've got how many in the, so to speak, in the can?
Yeah.
At least another 15 or so, right?
That's right. We have about 17 more right now that we're going to be slowly releasing so people can catch them one at a time. And really the impact is a lot broader when they are released, not all at once. And we're going to have other special productions that we're going to be releasing more frequently than that as well. So we hope that What Would You Say is going to be not only an answer to some of the big evergreen, big picture questions, but some of the more current events that happen as news items develop. We want to be a place that helps people think through them and gives them the tools to be able to think clearly as well as speak clearly about what's going on around them.
Well, I pray the Lord blesses those efforts, because I know you've been working on this project for about a year to produce the 20 or so videos that you've got. You've got about 17 weeks now, it sounds like, to get the next batch, and then only 7 days after that for each new one, though I know you're probably going to do them in different order than that. But that's a monumental undertaking that you have bitten off here, a video a week. And by the way, the Colson Center has bitten off with
That's
you.
right.
So we're all really excited about that and are excited about these videos finally going live, and going live in such a great way. I mean, I'll just say, Joseph, that I've been involved somewhat, but this has been your baby. This has been your project. Yeah. And just to see the professionalism that you've brought to the table, and everyone can see that now in the videos, but also the way the rollout. I mean, I'm looking at YouTube, and just in the first 48 hours, there were thousands of views of these 3 videos. And that's a real sign of both the excellence of the videos, but also of the diligence that you and other members of the Colson Center team have put in here. So God bless you. Thank you very much for all that hard work. And I guess I should just say carry on.
Hey, thank you, Warren. It's been a pleasure. And you're right. This has definitely been a team effort. And this is also just the beginning. And I will say to those who are out there who are listening, we hope that these are useful, and we want to hear from you, because we talk about it as being our beta, is that we're launching. We have a decades-long vision for what this can become for the global church in terms of resourcing people for the world around them. So, if you have thoughts, concerns, criticisms, questions, whatever those are, please let us know, because we are very much in a learning mode, and we want to know what's helpful, and we want to know what isn't helpful as well. And if you can, one of the things that's really helpful to us is if you go to the YouTube channel, even if you know you're going to find every video anyway, if you hit that subscribe button, it really helps us play the YouTube game, so that these videos will be delivered to other people who otherwise wouldn't come by it naturally. So everybody's got their part to play in this, and just so thankful to see it live now.
Well, Joseph, thanks for that final word, and thanks again for being on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Breakpoint Podcast. Please go to whatwouldyousay.org to see the first 3 videos in this series. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe to the weekly emails that will announce a new video release each Wednesday. Also, don't forget that during the month of September, the Colson Center is offering a great new book by Os Guinness. It's called Carpe Diem Redeemed, Seizing the Day, Discerning the Times. Os Guinness is one of the leading Christian thinkers of our time, and he's been a longtime friend of the Colson Center. His latest book won't be available to the public for several more weeks, but is available to Colson Center supporters now. It's a call for Christians to live consequential lives in a harried and distracted world. Carpe Diem Redeemed, Seizing the Day, Discovering the Times, is available at breakpoint.org with any donation you make to Breakpoint and the Colson Center. Again, that's breakpoint.org. And a quick program note before we go, be sure to join us again on Wednesday for Part 4 of our special series by Britt Hume, Robert George, and Chuck Colson, entitled Doing the Right Thing, an exploration of ethics. For the Colson Center, I'm Shane Morris.